So I'll begin with talking about why I'm working on the gun today because I had mentioned in the last stream that I might just go into the next program immediately. But one of the reasons I want to work on the gun is, again, I mentioned that I wanted to build the gun before the rest of the costume. I don't know if I'm going to do that or not, but basically, as long as I get the gun done today, then we'll be all ready to move into the next program on Saturday, which is probably when my next stream will be. So the important thing to memorize about if you're making a prop rather than armor, it's a whole different ball game. Mostly because you have an object that has no support on the inside, except when you make it. So when you're making armor, your bones are the support, and it's getting strapped to you. And the only side that's going to be seen is the outside of the armor. So there's an inside and an outside, and it's useless. When you have something that's enclosed that needs to be visible 360 degrees and beautiful and all this other good stuff, you start running into the problem of closing up those holes, making sure that you're actually creating the item perfectly symmetrical. Otherwise, you can have issues where even if you laser cut all of the parts and they're all exactly the same length, you can glue the foam in a method that will basically end up giving you a curved gun, basically. And you, of course, don't want that, even though the side panels will be exactly the same length, everything like that. You have to be very careful when you're actually gluing the gun together, or staff, whatever sword prop you're making, shield, just because it needs to be completely straight. So sometimes I'll run a PVC core as something to keep it from being floppy. So in my Crimson Lanceman's gun, I actually have the stock is floppy, and that was designed because the Crimson Lanceman can't hold the gun if that was to be a solid piece. It's just the way that the armor and the gun is designed. It just doesn't work that way. So that was floppy, but it looks like I'll probably run I may run a PVC pipe right down the stock right here. That's like the longest continuous piece because the next place would be here. And I don't that's not very this is right here in the middle of the gun. It's the longest part of it. The other part would be over here. And again, that doesn't run very long. This has the trouble of it would go start here because this is a small piece here, so it would actually have to start on the inside here. And it would only go towards here because with that angling down you'd run out of space for it. So yeah, I'll run that in the stock. Grab a PVC pipe. I'd have to go look at the pipe I used for the sniper rifle. I'll probably measure on the inside of this gun, assuming I'm using the 1/4 inch foam. So again, using my real life measurements to figure out how big the PVC pipe needs to be in diameter. Because I don't have any on hand, I believe, left over from any other costumes. Most materials I have on hand for costumes, but I don't have any PVC on hand right now. So let's get down to breaking this bad boy apart. This is gonna be interesting. So is there no... Why isn't it selecting... It should at least select the entire model as one entity here. Oh, I have a lock on, hang on. Boop. Okay, there we go. That's what I was hoping, is there would be some separated parts again. So I'm gonna go ahead and separate this right off the bat. And I think I'm just gonna go ahead and hide that for now. So I can take a look at some of these other objects. So for instance, the inside rings of those, whatever that is up there, this is probably a loading mechanism here. And that's separated. Alright, so let's go ahead. I'm going to back up. So everything is together again. And before I continue, I have a feeling that Yeah, see, these are all separated. Like, there is a part of that that is there, and there's a separate mesh on top here for some reason. And I'm not sure why these are detached. Again, it's like a... Hang on, let me look at this. Is there actually a... There's like an extra polygon here. Look at that, there's... That's weird. Okay. Guess I'm okay with that. I'm gonna need a point of reference for scale here. So whenever you're working with something that's kind of small, I like to have something that's going to give me an idea of, will this object matter at all, or am I just going to make, like, I need an idea of what's going to be one-sided. For instance, I can probably cut out the trigger out of one piece of foam. I don't need to make a four-sided object. So I'm going to make a 1-inch cube. There we go. And that gives me a point of reference because I know how big 1 inch is. Yeah, so I'll probably just cut that out of one piece of foam. So when it comes to the trigger here, I'm probably not going to bother with this in this program again. I could sit here and delete all of these faces except for this curve right here, and literally only those 2, 4, 6, 8 polygons, and leave those in there because that's all I'm going to use. But I'm going to do that whenever I get into the next program, which again, maybe today. So the gun itself is almost 6,000 polygons, jeez. The magazine, I need to look at how that's sitting in here. If there's a hole for it. A little bit, not all the way. The hole only goes to here. So I would need to cut off those top 2. That should be fine. Oh, excuse me. Sorry, guys. I was sneezing. It's that time of year. Alright. These are separated for some reason. They must rotate independent of the rest of the model in like an animation or something. Same thing with these. They just sit up here. I'll probably end up, let me see how big those are. I'll probably end up cutting out a circle of foam. It's going to be 2 foam deep, and then I'll just trim on the top the design that I want for this. I may even just like solder it out, because that's going to be a circle. This is going to be a circle, and then I'll just solder in these little teeth here. I don't know what this is up here. This guy right there. Yeah, so this is, I guess, loading it. Something to do with. That's the thing is, it's an automatic rifle. You would think this would be like a shell discharge right here. Something along those lines. So these are just superficial. There's nothing underneath them, so that's the only reason those are separated. Same thing with this. Yeah, it's a superficial detail. Same thing on the other side. This guy, why is this separated? Is this a hole here? Nope. Look at that. That's gonna be just one piece of foam cut out in that shape and glued in that specific spot. I'm not used to... This is just such a weird gun. Like, you wouldn't have... Why would this be up here if the magazine is back here? So, normally you'd have this, like, right above the magazine, like, right in line with the, where it's firing. This is just such a weird gun. It's very, very fantasy fake. And some people who actually like guns are like, you got all these names wrong and all this other stuff wrong. And I'm like, I know. Go back to invisible. I have a feeling this is going to be pretty short here because a lot of this stuff is stuff that I can do in the next program that I'm not going to bother with here. So why is this separate? Does the tip of this change when you pick the laser sight, one of the scope options? That's another thing, is I have a feeling that... I want to know why these polygons, these triangles are here. You don't want one point with a million vertices coming out like that. It can mess with your shaders. It's such a weird gun. That's the only thing I can think of, is that these parts that are detached actually change in game into something else, depending on which helix options you choose, like if you pick the scopes. And all of these rail options are separate. Gun does need more spikes, I agree with that. And like how Oscar Mike changes his DNA to put a scope on his gun. Yeah, the helix options for the character change his gun. The gun is obviously a part of his body. Good observation, Dwaff. This will be hollowed out. I won't be keeping these. It'll actually be see-through. Usually in a lot of my guns, you can actually... The barrel exists. Like, it may not be a smooth barrel, but there is a hole that usually goes all the way back in there. And sometimes you can put lights in the back of my gun. So with, like, Bastion's gun, since it's a part of his arm, the person's arm, he comes in through the back here, and then he has his arm up here, and then the barrel's up here. So you can have, like, a gun, like a Nerf gun, and you can shoot darts out of it with your hand, or you could put just a light in there so you have a light coming out of the gun. Things like that. I don't think there's anything else that I can do in this program. I think this gun is probably good to go. Go ahead and boop. And I didn't do this in the last stream. We actually need to export these as OBJs before I can move into the next program. Do that with the other file as well. Alright, so we're ready to move into the next stage. So that's it for that program. It's going to go black for a second, guys, because I need to start up the next program, which, if you're wondering what it is Pepakura. Maximize that out, and I need to change this. Yep, there we go. Alright, fixed it automatically. I'm going to have to bring this down in this stream. There we go. It's interesting. It doesn't capture everything on the capture, so it's not showing up right. Alright, so from in Pepakura, I'm going to go ahead and go over Pepakura really quick. Let me see if I can get on here. So this is Pepakura Designer. If you're interested in getting it, there's a free version called Pepakura Viewer, I believe. So in that, you can only view files. That's it. So even if you can't do anything else. So even if you're not going to purchase Pepakura Designer, you at least need to download it. There is a free version of Pepakura Designer. It's the same file. You just don't put in the unlock code that you purchase. And the only things that are really important that you can't do in that one, I don't think you can export the file as a 3D file like an OBJ, and you can't save your files. But it's perfectly fine for if you're opening up a file, which I'll probably provide my files here at the end when I'm done with them as part of the work log. And you can print out the files and modify them however you want. Like I said, you just can't save them. So back when I first started using Pepakura and I was working on practicing with Halo armor, I could open up the files and the files were very poorly unwrapped, so I would re-unwrap them every time I opened the files because it was a big pet peeve of mine. So basically, long story short, you want Pepakura Designer, which you can't see in the bar, but I can. It's Pepakura Designer instead of Pepakura Viewer. And let's go ahead and... Oh, it's going to be in the other folder here. Let's start with... Let's keep going with the gun since we started this one with the gun. We'll do the body later. These should all be correct, so you can see the arrows pointing correctly. So next, no invert. Okay. So from here, you have just your model, which it's doing something with the targa. I don't know if it knows how to read targas, honestly. Let's see here. Okay, that should be the one, so that's fine. Yeah, that's white. Okay. I guess it doesn't know how to read targets. I can change that to a PNG for the sake of having a file on here later. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and change it to that file that I set for the other one. I think it's in the downloads folder. That one. My one white pixel. There you go. That way we have a nice clean representation of the gun on here. We don't have to worry about textures. It does need stickers, Swaff. Maybe I can put some stickers on my gun. So first step, you're going to want to know that this piece of paper over here is empty. And the reason is because we haven't unfolded it yet. I have my scale set to, I had to do this manually. I had to calculate how large the item was in 3ds Max, how many, millimeters that was, roughly converted over to for Pepakura, and then that was my scale. That's my personal transferring scale from 3ds Max into Pepakura. So you're going to need to set that yourself. You can tell just based on whatever the height, width, depth, you can measure all that in Max, whatever your 3D program is, measure it, and then just bring in one of those and it should fill in the other two based on that because it's not going to scale it in unequally. Okay, and then you get this horrible mess of unfolded junk. I do not need the flaps. If you're making this out of paper, by the way, so the whole purpose of Pepakura is it's supposed to be a paper folding program. So it adds these flaps on here because if you're folding paper, you would put glue on this flap and it would go underneath there, and then you would have a nice clean paper edge. But we're making it out of 1/4-inch foam. We don't want flaps on ours. At least I'm making mine out of 1/4-inch foam. You can make yours out of paper if you want. So I turn off the flaps. Just by turning off show flaps, it gets rid of them. It doesn't mean just visually they no longer exist, but when it goes to print it out, they will no longer exist. So that's important. If you want, when you get into actually printing it on paper, if you are going to print it on paper, you can have it print out edge numbers. And it's going to take a sec. It's going to slow down my PC because there's a lot of edges on this model. There's a lot of polygons. You can see we have edge 4752 matches up with edge 4752. So when you go to actually glue your parts together, it has numbers on it. I won't need that. Whew. Alright. I guess I should also mention, just like any other program, you want to get used to the tools, which if you right click, these are all the tools that I'll be using, and I'll be using the shortcuts over here because I know most of them. I'll be using the move tool, the rotate tool, the join tool, and sometimes the check corresponding face tool. Everything else I don't really need. There's nothing else I really have use for. But now that I've unwrapped it, I'm going to go ahead and save it as a Pepakura file. And I'm going to save it over here. Boop. All done. So if we go ahead and go into Control K, which is check corresponding face, it's going to bring up this part list. And everything is going to be selected. We're going to go ahead and deselect everything. That way when you select an actual part, it's similar to how if you're selecting an item in 3ds Max, it will highlight that part. Except in this mode, it will make everything else transparent, making it easier to find. And it will also highlight it over here for it to be easier for you to find. Great for finding parts. If you have a tiny polygon over here that you just cannot find the piece for, so for instance, there's a bunch of tiny polygons here, we can click on them. Boop. And now we see that it's right there. And we're probably not going to need it because that's part of those rings that were in there. I probably should have deleted those. But, so for instance, we have those. So, controls, again, we're going to go in Control N, which is your corresponding mode. Select additional faces mode or whatever, what have you. So that part is actually part of the gun here. So that's not the part that I thought it was. Just going to move that out of the way. Not too worried about parts overlapping right now. So early on, I'll begin by getting rid of a lot of these tiny faces. So for instance, I'm just going to continue connecting these because I don't want any additional parts to be left over at the end. Wouldn't that be great, Dwarf? If everything was as simple as we thought it would be, then the world would be a better place, I think, in general. So you can clean up the model however much you want. If the gun is completely symmetrical, which this gun is not, but if your item is completely symmetrical, you can delete half of the model and only bring half of the model in here. For instance, I did this on previous costumes. I wasn't going to bother on this one. I would have deleted this thing right here because this side is exactly the same. However, I'm just going to do that in here because it's not that big of a deal. So this is connecting, looks like this is the back side of that same piece. So it's the inside of that. So that's another piece that I'm not going to need. But I would still need to connect all these parts just so I have them here. So they aren't floating around like this little bugger right there. This guy is just one of the details, so that's a small piece. I'm literally just connecting random tiny parts just because I don't like having them around and I don't want to forget about them later. So I always just start with getting rid of them by adding them to the part that they go to. Look at these tiny little nubs that are going to go on this stupid piece right here that are not going to get printed out. Boop. So if you're wondering why I'm using Pepakura at all, this is the program that I'm making my patterns in. This program is so wonderful because unlike unwrapping models in 3ds Max or some other program, unlike unwrapping them for textures, this program will not allow you to manipulate the edges and the shapes of the polygons, so you can't stretch them out like a skin. Which is great because you don't want that if you're doing this. It's bad if you're working with fabric because that's something you need to do with fabric, but for armor, this program is the bomb. Saves you so much trouble. All these boring tiny parts. Ice is helping to make the world a better place. Are you speaking of the object or the person? Dwaff. That's part of that already. Okay. This is part of the trigger. Look at that, guys. This is a nice little curly thing. Okay. So I have a bunch of parts just roaming around down there, so I'm going to move up here and drag some of them up here with me. I really hate those tiny things. Ideally, you'll be able to, like, I have to scroll all the way out here to get that down there. Oop. Ideally, you'll move the smaller parts to whatever the big thing is. You don't cover up all this junk here. I don't know if ice is really that simple. I disagree with you, Dwaff. I agree with the simpler stuff, but I don't think he's a simple person, honestly. I think he comes off as simple, but he's not actually. kind of music do you listen to, Dwaff? He's memes. I'm going to go ahead and pause for a second really quick. So another important thing, you want to do this before printing, obviously. You actually want to do this before you lay out your pattern on your piece of paper. Print and paper settings. By default, it's going to be A4. I don't know anyone in the US that uses A4. This is a Japanese program. They use A4 paper in Japan, hence why it's A4. You're probably going to be printing out on letter paper if you are. I will be using other. And I'm going to go ahead and save this, and then go to, let's open up a Caldarius file. I don't think I have Caldi on here. I think I may have moved him to another hard drive. Let me search really quick. I'll be right back. I have laser files here. You only listen to the most jive of disco 24/7. I was gonna wear a skulk mask. You were wondering about the skulk file. I was gonna make a skulk mask for the tournament since we were the skulk squad, but it's a very organic model. And I didn't feel like fighting with that in the limited time that we had, hence why I made a bunch of other props and stuff that was just very easy to do. What is the file? PDO, right. Haven't done this in a while. I don't think I have any of those files on this computer. I do, however, have some of the laser files. So that's going to open up another program here for me really quick. And you guys are going to be able to see what I'm doing here. This is a half sheet of foam. But basically, the file size that I'm going to be putting in here is going to be about that big. It's going to be like 3-4 pages tall by like 10 pages wide, because if I'm laser cutting it, that's the printer bed for the laser cutter. But I'll leave it on paper for now, that's fine. The default American paper size is fine for this. I may or may not use it. Okay, so here's our trigger here, guys. So, for instance, if we have all of our parts, so this is, let me go ahead and do this right now. So this is our trigger right here. If you want to know for sure that it's the trigger, you just click on it. Look, there's our trigger. You can also see that there's none of the polygons are missing from this just by rotating around it, and also you go back into this mode. Just hover over all the edges. All of them will be connected here rather than elsewhere. So that's why we're making sure that all the parts are together. So we have no stray parts missing from this. I can go ahead and disconnect that. This is now my, and I'm actually gonna, let's see. Yeah, I'll leave this as is. But this is what I'd be printing out, is this right here, and then all of these polygons here are trash. This is the depth of the trigger and all of the fold lines. So this goes here, this goes here, this goes here, 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 here. But because I'm using a foam that is thick enough for this, I don't need any of this information. All I need is the sideways shadow of it. And then I would also probably just cut that off whenever I go to either print it out in paper or in the other, again, the next program following this one, if I was laser cutting it, I would draw a line from here to here and delete that. You can do that in Max or you can do it in the laser file. It doesn't matter. There's a million ways you can do stuff. Again, no wrong way to do cosplay. It's just a matter of doing whatever's fastest for you, whatever you find out is easiest for you, whatever works in the programs that you're using. This is just for the programs I'm using and the experience that I've had over the years. So I'm going to go ahead and reattach that just so I don't have any missing parts from that when we go back to it. And I'm going to keep working on combining all this other tiny junk into other parts here. And you know what? I don't need this right now. I think I can actually just get rid of that. 2D window only. That way I have this entire screen for me to use for purposes of combining all this junk. So this saves a lot of time down the line because if you had started right off the bat, say doing what I did with the trigger, and you're like, all right, I want to save this piece. You put it up in the top corner and you move your trash piece over there. By the time you get to the end of organizing everything, you're going to have a bunch of tiny pieces just floating around. You're going to be like, what does this go to? Oh, it goes here. Well, I didn't know that. Oh, well, this goes here. Oh, well, I need to make room for that. And it snowballs. So it's important to get rid of all this tiny stuff at the very beginning and make sure you have all of your parts together in one place. That way, when you're pulling the model apart, you can make an informed decision about what you need to keep and how much space it's going to take on the final pattern, things like that. This is going to be one of the support arms for one of the so we have our gun here, this is our stock, this is our handle, this is the magazine, and then there's the barrel. It's the thing that's up here. This is going to be around the barrel, probably. And sometimes you'll get to a point where you're like, I don't see where stuff connects. You can just float your mouse over stuff until you find something new that you haven't hit before. And like I missed this piece here. That needs to be connected up here. What is those? These are the rings that I don't need. These are the trash rings around the boop. That one and that one around there. So those are the things I don't need. And it's just as easy to select them on here since they're already connected to each other and throwing them in my trash pile up here later on. I can just be like, alright, well these are trash meshes. So I will get them off of the paper up here. Totally trash. Doesn't exist anymore in my world. One of the reasons I just do that is because it's easy for me to pull it back out when I get to the point of that. And another reason you want to get rid of a bunch of tiny polygons here is that on some meshes, they're going to be dirty. You're not always going to have a clean pull from a video game, for instance. Or if you have a very high polygon model, you don't want to just have like tiny holes in your patterns, things that could throw off when you're unwrapping the pattern, what it's supposed to end up like. Getting rid of all that solves all of those problems. Alright, so these should all be here. Boop, boop, boop. Nice. Okay, there's that. That drags that up so I can work on some of these smaller ones here. Let's go ahead and move these out of the way. Another detail item. This is that thing that's on the side of the gun. That's, right behind these things. Just kind of go over thing and find... Yep, there we go. Connecting it to the larger hole here. And you may be like, well, how are you going to work through this mess? Well, we'll get to that in a second. There's a pretty easy way to deal with it. Oh, these are those little detail things that are just on the side of the gun. So when we come down to making these patterns, I'm only gonna mess with one of them. I'm gonna make one of them look really good, and then I'm gonna move all the others into the trash pile because I can copy that in the laser file later into 2, 4, 6, 8 versions of itself. This is... okay, that's gonna be a trash piece come... Alright, let's see here. So I'm going to go ahead and move some of these bigger pieces that I have selected here, just to prove to myself that I don't have any tiny polygons sitting stranded over there that need a home. Again, just to save time later. Go through a nice process of moving everything so that we can be certain that we've got all of our bases covered. I'm gonna put that over here for now. Okay, that's a detail piece. And I'm gonna just double check all these. There we go, we found one. There, and there. Alright, that should be good. So now we have this guy here, and this guy here. And there's something, I think it's right there. Look at that. Is it too small for me to land on right here? I gotta go in there. Come on, little guy. You had a red line a second ago. There it is. Oh, there we go. That was the last little polygon, so I'm gonna go ahead and save right there. Woo! That is step one in Pepakura, is just cleaning up all of that junk. So now we have at least something manageable. We know that all of these tiny pieces exist on the gun somewhere, and hopefully for an important reason. So we can go back now and we can select that and say, alright, this is whatever that is on the gun. Hopefully it's the only one of its kind. It looks like there's one over here, and it, for whatever reason, it's just attached. So if I hide that piece, it still exists on the gun. So this is trash. This is a duplicated polygon for some reason. So this is just part of, it's what would you call that? An artifact from basically probably pulling it from the game. There's that tiny little bugger. We know what that is. That's a piece of detail. This is trash. This is on top of the existing thing there. So we don't need that. That's one of those detail pieces. I believe there's one on the other side as well. No? That's the only one of his kind. I'm thinking of this guy up here, which is apparently part of that. So this is a detail piece. And then for these guys, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. We only need one of those. I'm going to go ahead and trash the other 7. Oh, it's selecting the giant thing next to it. Hang on. There we go. Aha! I have one. Trash. These are mirror pieces. This one and this one. Let's find out what they are really quick. So these are the supports for that, so those are completely fine to throw one in the garbage. You know, we have our trigger, there's only one of those. There's 2 of these guys, so where is his fellow? I can just go ahead and select that there. There's his fellow right there. So those two should be symmetrical. I only need one of them. I'm gonna throw that in the trash. Put that there. And I'm gonna separate all these items that I have multiples of so that I remember that I need to multiply them whenever it comes to laser cutting. So there's only one of those. There's only one of those. There's only one of these. These guys. This one is the same as this one? Maybe? No, this is the same as that one there. So then this one is the same as that one. Alright, so we have multiples of that one. And this one. What is this? This is the support on this side, so there should be a duplicate of this one somewhere. Is that this guy here? Okay, so I only need one of those. There's two of those. It's multiples. Place that over here. What is this? I only have one of those. Oop. This guy? Believe, yeah, there's only one of these. I think that's the tip of the gun there. Yeah. It's the top. I think this connects to, yeah, this connects over here. There we go. Only one of those. This should connect to the rest of the gun. We're gonna end up with a big jumble of a gun when we finally get all these pieces done. So what does this turn into here? What is that? That entire stock? And see, this should connect here. It's just a matter of finding that edge. It's probably up here. Yep. I'll go ahead and connect it for now. This should connect. These are independent pieces, and we have duplicates of these, so let's go ahead. I should pay attention to which side I'm keeping and which side I'm throwing away. Okay, that doesn't matter, but this one... It's the left-hand side. Left. 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 Okay, perfect. So, while it may not look it from all of those being the left-hand side, I was not paying attention to which side I was getting rid of, which you should. Because you'll want to make sure that you know which side is which whenever you print out your pattern, since you have to copy your pattern. Okay, this should be our magazine, which is a separate piece. This was a separate piece for no reason, no apparent reason. And then this is going to connect to the other side. It's going to be the probably the bottom of the gun. Yeah. Is this... That should be this edge here. Boop. Let me move this down here. Does this not connect to any? Oh, this is that piece. Okay, so we only have one of those. So there's our one of pile. I'm gonna move that. My one of pile is gonna go over here. And my multiple of pile is gonna go over here. So we only have one of these. Boop. We only have one of these. And it's gonna end up being, when I cut this down, I'm probably gonna only keep one side of this, so it's going to end up moving into the multiples pile. But for now, it's going to stay in the one of pile. Okay, so now we have an interestingly sorted pile that you're like, well, we have this giant mess over here. At least everything's connected. We have this pile of things that need to be copied more than once, no matter what. This pile of things that is starting as at least one item and may or may not be copied into multiple items, such as the magazine or the barrel. And that's just our starting point. So let me go ahead and save that. And I think this is a good place to cut the video, and I'm going to take a break from the stream. Thank you for watching.